PlayStation 2 was on a roll. There were so many games made by Sony during this console era. That's why it's one of the best-selling consoles of all time. A lot of original PlayStation games got sequels on this system, like Ape Escape, Wild Arms, Siphon Filter, and even Parappa the Rapper. You even got new IPs that were released, games like Dark Cloud, Okage the Shadow King, and as well as God of War, the game that everybody knows. I feel like in the 2000s, you saw so many games published by Sony, and they were definitely experimental on what they wanted to release. Well, San Diego Studio released a game called the Mark of Kri, and this game definitely was kind of under the radar when it came out. I never even heard about this game back in the day, but I definitely feel like it would have been a game I would have tried as a kid, despite it being rated M. I played this game for a little while and definitely want to give my personal hunch if this game is worth your time to check out or not, so sit back, chill, let's talk about the Mark of Kri for the PlayStation 2. The Mark of Kri was developed by San Diego Studio of Sony as well as published by them. It came out in 2002 in North America and 2003 in PAL regions for the PS2. San Diego Studio formed not too long from this time. The Mark of Kri is actually their first game they have developed as a studio. Other things they're known for, well, there's not really much. They have developed all of the MLB The Show games, and they still make them today at the time of this video. The game is centered around this guy named Rao, and he's a silent protagonist, accompanied by his bird, Kuzo, which he's a spiritual bird, and he is the narrator of the entire game because it's told like a story in a way. It starts off with you helping out your village, and your guardian, Bamusu, who your parents died when you were younger, so he's raised you and trained you to be a good warrior. You do these odd fetch quests until you meet this mysterious man in the inn earlier in the game, and he offers you money for retrieving something for him in this temple. Well, you do so, and it turns out later by a fortune teller he is a counterfeit and he works for the Kasai, an evil organization type deal. It turns out what you retrieved for him was one of the Marks of Kri, which is basically if you obtain 6 of the pieces, you unlock this power, and this guy wants to do it for evil. So, pretty cliche here, but you need to go and stop this guy from taking over the world basically. Once you cut the game on, it's new game, load game, and delete game. It's very straight to the point. When you cut new game on, you get a cutscene, and then you're off to the races. The Mark of Kri is an action-adventure, beat-em-up, hack-and-slash type of game, with more emphasis on the beat-em-up hack-and-slash. You can move with the D-pad or the left control stick, but you'll probably be using the left control stick because it's more precise. The right stick is actually not your camera. It instead is a target beam that you have, and you'll use it all the time. You'll use this to lock onto enemies, and when you do, the target will be highlighted X, square, or circle. You can have up to 3 with your sword, but more with later weapons. This is how you attack your enemies. Once you lock onto them, the button you press is the enemy that you'll fight, and you can use this to bounce between enemies, so it's a very unique battle system. R1 is to block with your sword or unarm enemies if you have no weapon on. L1 is kind of how you adjust the camera a little bit, so sometimes when you're facing the wall, you can just use L1 and you'll be looking forward, as well as using your bow and arrow to aim. R2 is how you cycle through your weapons that you've got, and the last function is triangle and L2. They kind of work together. L2 brings out Kuzo. So in this game, you can use Kuzo at these waypoints, and he'll fly to him, and you can get a glimpse of what's to come with his eyes. You can swap in between with triangle as well from Rao to Kuzo, so it's very nice to know and get more camera view here. The objective of this game is very simple and linear. Beat up the bad guys, get to the end zone. That's all there is to it, classic gameplay style. The pickup items in this game are pretty streamlined too, and you'll find these hearts and they'll give you some health, and you can see Rao's health bar right below him. You can also get health upgrades, and these things are nice because they not only heal you but add another layer of health on you. You can have up like to 5 or 6, there's a lot. You can find arrows for your bow and arrow, and you'll get that later in the game, as well as save scrolls. Now save scrolls pretty much act like ink ribbons in Resident Evil. It's kind of up to you when you want to use them. They act as checkpoints and as save points, so if you need to cut the game off, you can come back later and cut it on where you left off. The last thing you can pick up is this Tuku thing, and it's kind of like your special item in every level, kind of like a gem in Crash or something, and you can use this and go back to this guy at the end where you can talk to him to replay levels, and you can use those things to play with all weapons on any level you play through. After starting the game and in between levels, you're at this inn hub-like kind of thing, and you can talk to NPCs by pressing triangle if you want to. It's very linear though, you kind of have to just talk to one person to trigger a quest, and you can talk to that guy with the tukus I mentioned earlier, and you can replay levels and miscellaneous stuff as well. There's also a training level too, so if you want to learn how to play the game better and get good, then you can do that. You'll fight enemies all the time in this game. It's about maybe 75% of the gameplay here, and as you see them, of course, like I said, you can lock onto them at 3 at a time, unless you have the Tayaha, as they call it. That's this weapon that's like a paddle spear thing. That thing can lock on to 6 targets, but that's way later in the game. As you're attacking your enemies with the buttons assigned to them, you do have a combo system here. When you have less than 3 targets as your enemies, you can perform a lot more combos, and they're very simple. There are about 4 buttons or so as you do them, and it can be very helpful using them because it can really kill your enemies a lot faster. The sword is your main weapon, and you'll start that when you start playing the game, and you'll probably be using this weapon the most throughout the playthrough. You get a bow and arrow as well, and this is very good at ranged combat, and you'll need to use this against certain enemies like archers who you can't get with the melee weapon. Then you get this thing called a Tayaha, as I said. I hope I pronounced that right. It's like a spear paddle-like thing, and you get it like on the second half of the game, and it's pretty good. It's slow, but you can hit up to 6 targets rather than 3, unlike the sword. The last weapon is an axe, and you get that at the end of the game, so it's the strongest weapon in the game, but it's also very, very slow. There's not a ton of enemy variety in this game. You have your swordsmen that you'll see, as well as archers and axe wielders, and you'll see the same enemies just like that, but they'll have armor throughout the game, and when they have armor, you can't use the bow and arrow. You gotta beat them with your melee weapons. Kuzo can actually see what kind of enemies you're gonna see and face up against when he's in viewpoint too. You do a lot of stealth in this game as well. They're very heavy on the stealth here, and you'll be sneaking up behind enemies and killing them, and you have a sequence of buttons because you can actually kill about 2 at a time, and you'll press 3 buttons and you assassinate him. It's pretty satisfying, and they did a good job with the stealth in this game. There are some action-adventure elements, but not many. You'll use Kuzo. That's about as much action-adventure as you'll get here. He can activate switches and levers, and you can too sometimes, and he can even push down ladders for you to get to other areas. There's only 6 levels in the entire game, which sounds very underwhelming, but after the second level, they do get a lot longer. The last 3 levels are very long, mainly because you have to take your time moving around and stealth killing and such. If there's one thing this game has, it definitely has some challenge to it. It's not the hardest game or anything like that, but you definitely got to be on your toes when playing this game and knowing when to block efficiently. You can even swing your sword into wood or hit against walls and it bounces off, so you definitely want to avoid anything like that when you're fighting. Level 3, the forest, is definitely to me the hardest level, mainly because they don't give you hardly any save scrolls. And when you use a save scroll, those things are precious in that level, but I didn't really have a problem with this in the later part of the game, so not too sure, very weird. Don't get me wrong though, the game still gets challenging from that point on, it's just a lot more forgiving because you can save more. The Mark of Kri is definitely a cool game here on the PS2. Even though the gameplay can get a little repetitive after time, it is still a fun game overall. I love the vibe of this game as well as the music. You know, Polynesian setting, you don't see that too many times in games. The music definitely sets the tone for these battles. It's really cool to hear that tribal music going on. For a beat-em-up hack-and-slash game, the level design is actually pretty good. Every level feels different and you do different things throughout the levels to keep it interesting. It's also just fun going through the settings in this game. That's one thing I love about games is all the different areas you go through. I do have some complaints though. It's kind of easy to bump into stuff in the end. I had a problem with this. Not too crazy, but wanted to mention that, and throughout the game. Aiming with the bow is a pain in the ass in this game, so you don't have a cursor or anything. You kind of just have to wiggle the control stick until the X button highlights on the enemy. Just thought that was very hard to use. There's also a lack of boss fights in this game. You pretty much just fight enemies and hordes of them, and that's about really all here. The story was pretty cool and interesting, but I think there was just a lack of characters here. Like, your character doesn't really talk, and you don't really get to know anyone. There's only the villain you meet, and that's about it. It just kind of seemed like an empty glass shell when it comes to the characters. Overall though, the Mark of Kri is absolutely worth your time to check out on the PS2. The great news to play this game is it's very cheap on the PS2 for all regions. It's like $10 or less, so that's a very good way to go about it and good to add to your collection. Or if you want to play on modern consoles and you refuse to buy physical media, then you can get it for $10 on the PS5 store all day. This game also sorta got a sequel called Rise of the Kasai, and it's kind of just more of this, but we'll definitely talk about this game on this channel someday. I'd love this game to get a remake. It's a kind of an old game now, came out about 20 plus years ago, and this game being remade, it would do excellent in today's time. If not though, we can always play the original. That's all I've got to say about this game. If you got anything to say, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your opinions, suggestions, or anything you want to talk about in this video. As always, thanks for watching. Y'all take it easy.